Hey, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Answers on Eschatology. My name is Dan Derry, and I am the president of the Institute of Fulfilled Eschatology. And we continue again in our study on the transition between two covenants. And we've been looking at the book of Galatians, which powerfully demonstrates that the saints were in fact receiving the Abrahamic inheritance through the establishment of the new covenants. And let's continue in the book of in Galatians chapter 4, and we'll start in verse 21 today. Tell me, you who want to be under the law, do you not listen to the law? For it is written that Abraham had two sons, one by the bondwoman and one by the free woman. Now we're all familiar with the two sons of Abraham, probably, Isaac and Ishmael. One of the bondwoman was Ishmael from Hagar, and the other of the free woman was Isaac through Sarah. Now watch this. But the son of the bondwoman, Ishmael, was born according to the flesh. This is not about natural birth. And the son by the free woman was through the promise. Now they were both born physically by natural birth, but this flesh and promise harken back to Paul's words in Galatians chapter 3 and verse 3. Paul says to his Galatians, are you so foolish, having begun in the spirits, are you being now made perfect by the flesh? In other words, having begun in this new covenant, do you think the old law, do you think that old system is going to perfect you? And Paul begins this analogy, this allegory in Galatians 4. The son of the bondwoman was born according to the flesh. In other words, this is according to the old covenant. This son of the bondwoman, Ishmael, represents the old covenant, okay? He's born through the old covenant. But the son of the free woman, through the Spirit. In other words, he's coming through the new covenant. This son, Isaac, born according through Sarah, represents the sons of the new covenant. Let's go on. Paul explains this. This is allegorically speaking. For these women are two covenants, one proceeding from Mount Sinai, bearing children who are to be slaves. She is Hagar. Now watch this. These women, Hagar and Sarah, represent two covenants. What covenant? Old covenant and new covenant. And she, Hagar, proceeding from Sinai, is bearing children who are to be slaves. Who is this? It's the Ishmael seed. It's the sons of the old covenant. Now watch this. Now this Hagar is Mount Sinai in Arabia and corresponds to the present Jerusalem, for she is in slavery with her children. Now guys, this is not this present Jerusalem of 2018. Jerusalem that exists today is not Old Covenant Jerusalem of 50 to 70 AD, okay? It's not. And this is what Paul says. Hagar is Mount Sinai in Arabia. What does that mean? Hagar represents the Old Covenant. Sinai was the place of the establishment of the Old Covenant and corresponds to present Jerusalem. In other words, the Jerusalem of that day represented the old covenants, okay? For she is in slavery with her children. Who? Hagar is in slavery with her children. So old covenant Jerusalem represented the old covenant, and those born through that old covenant were in bondage with that old covenant. Are you with me? They were the sons of Hagar, and they represent the Ishmael seed. Okay? So as Paul's teaching that, listen guys, those who would remain attached through the old covenant to physical Jerusalem, to the present day Jerusalem at that time, were just like Ishmael. They were illegitimate heirs. They were sons of the slave woman, and they could never have the inheritance. But watch what he says in 4:26. But the Jerusalem above is free, and she is our mother. And remember, their mother in this context was Sarah. The Jerusalem above represents the New Jerusalem, representing the new covenant Sarah. Remember, these women are two covenants, and she was their mother. The new covenant was birthing the sons of promise. Just as Sarah gave birth to Isaac, the son of promise, the new covenant, represented by Sarah, was birthing a new covenant seed, the seed of promise, the sons of promise, who were rightful heirs to the Abrahamic inheritance. So, guys, that's where I want to leave it this week. But please understand Paul's powerful allegory. Those who refused to come out of the old covenant system and enter into the new covenant in Jesus Christ, they became sons of Hagar. And Hagar represented the old covenant, represented the physical Jerusalem, and Hagar was in bondage. She was a slave. So the sons who stayed in that old covenant system were enslaved. They could never inherit the promise. Just like Ishmael could never inherit the inheritance which would truly be Isaac's. But those in Jesus Christ who had been redeemed from that old covenant through Jesus Christ, who had been made sons, had now become heirs of the promise. And they, like Isaac, would inherit their inheritance, the inheritance of their father Abraham, by faith. So guys, we're going to get into that next week, and we're going to see that not only would those under the old covenant not receive the inheritance, but their destiny was to be forever excluded and cast out from the inheritance in Jesus Christ. And we'll get that to that next time. Guys, appreciate you watching. Hope that has been a blessing. We'll see you next time on Answers on Eschatology. Bye for now.